The next arc is finally here, and it's already shaping up completely different from what we were all expecting, because in chapter 1126 of One Piece, Oda shocked us all when half of the Straw Hats crew straight up vanished. Which of course opens up a ton of new great possibilities for what the next arc will actually look like, and it might not even end up being Elbaf itself. Because to somehow make things even weirder, at the end of this chapter we see Nami trapped inside a giant Lego room, which hints at the fact that we might potentially be getting an entirely separate arc before even reaching Elbaf itself, and this turn of events is just absolutely mind-blowing. But that's of course not the only insane event from this new arc, because we also got to see the true ruthlessness of Shanks' crew, plus hints at Blackbeard's stunning plan to take over the world as well. All that might not even matter though if Nami and the crew can't figure out exactly who kidnapped them and how to escape this mysterious Legoland. And so to break this plot twist down into pieces, there are 3 explanations that I personally can see for what is really going on here. First though, it does appear that Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, and Chopper have all disappeared along with the Thousand Sunny, and we do know this because those are the only Straw Hats that didn't show up on the giant ship during this chapter. So the very first question I ask myself is, why specifically those characters, and why did Oda decide to separate them right now? Something that I will say we have speculated a few chapters ago might happen. And well, actually, there are some pretty straightforward answers here that could be possible. First off, this could just be some sort of short mini arc before Elbaf, where this part of the crew specifically needs to undergo some sort of training or learn some new type of skill before eventually reaching Elbaf. Secondly, this could be a full story arc that runs parallel to the rest of the crew already arriving on Elbaf and kind of setting some roots there. Or third, this could actually already be part of the Elbaf arc and we just don't really know it quite yet. I mean, who knows? Maybe Legos are popular toys in the land of the giants, and now to really figure out which of these 3 options is the most likely and is actually happening here, let's look at some actual factual evidence in the chapter and the purpose for why Oda might have chosen each of these options. And let's start things off here with the idea that this will just be a self-contained mini arc before even reaching Elbaf to begin with, and really the evidence for this comes from 2 pieces of information that we got in this very chapter as well. Number 1, Dory and Broggy say right here in this panel that they won't go to Elbaf without the rest of the crew present, especially Luffy, I guess. And then there's also this kind of strange narrator line that says that they have yet to arrive in Elbaf, which hints to me that something strange is going on that is actually preventing the crew from reaching the land of the giants themselves. Anyone else thinking of this really suspicious panel right here, which could be the man marked by flames? And there are also some strange rumors about this mysterious character, including some stuff with black ships and whirlpools, so ships disappearing certainly seems to go along with what we've been so far told about this mysterious character. But if this were to be the case, then the big question here is of course, why? Why separate the Straw Hats for yet another full arc before Elbaf and keep tickling our balls here? Well, it could be as simple as they need some more training, and you might be thinking that's kind of strange considering that Luffy is one of the strongest characters in the story at this point, but that doesn't really mean that the other Straw Hats who are with him couldn't use a significant boost in power, especially the weakling trio of Usopp, Nami, and Chopper, who are all gone with Luffy. On the other hand, if it ends up not being for training though, perhaps there is some information here that is really vital to the Straw Hats' success that they need to know before they can enter Elbaf. Or the most likely situation here is that there is someone who needs their help, and this is really just Oda's way again of introducing this character in a really meaningful and dramatic way. I mean, just kind of think about how many arcs in One Piece started where we meet a new character who the Straw Hats then need to help during their time throughout the entire arc. I'm thinking about characters like Kinemon in Punk Hazard, Kaimi before Sabaody, or Tama in Wano say. So clearly this is something that Oda really likes to do with setting up a sympathetic character right from the start of a big arc or even before that very arc begins. Another example that comes to mind here is Vivi before Alabasta, quite a few arcs before Alabasta to be precise, so it's not like it's unheard of. So that could be what we're seeing in this final scene of this chapter. However, this would also be the perfect opportunity for the Giants to bust out a rescue operation for Luffy and the crew, or for Usopp to show off and do something spectacular in front of the giants by breaking out of this strange Lego world. And also, speaking of the Legos in this chapter, it honestly would not surprise me at all if this just ends up being an entire mini arc that takes place in some sort of Lego world. I mean, I went looking and I actually couldn't find anything Lego specific in any of the many shots that we got from Oda's office over the recent years, but nonetheless, I would be more than surprised if this man wasn't a total Lego fan and was building little miniatures of future arcs in the little free time that he actually has. I mean, come on, that just seems like such an Oda thing to do, and he has drawn Lego before, so I'm pretty sure this man is a fan. And honestly though, as great as the mini arc option actually would be, I personally think there are even more potentially great options out there for what is going on right now, because I feel like there is an even greater chance that this isn't going to be a self-contained separate arc from Elbaf, but instead it will be some sort of parallel story that will play out while the rest of the crew already heads to Elbaf, which in my humble opinion would actually be the best possible scenario for Nico Robin, because after getting almost no time to shine at all during the entire Egghead Island arc that was stacked with lore about the One Piece world, a split up of the crew could be the perfect setup for Robin to get one of the most tear-jerking reunions in all of One Piece all to herself. So everyone, get ready to bust out your Dereshishi laughs, because Robin and the giant Jaguar di Sol will surely meet up soon and discuss all the research that was rescued from Ohara and brought to Elbaf. Come on, Oda, I mean, you really hinted at this, so please just make it happen. Plus, this part of the crew can establish initial connections with citizens of Elbaf to get things going, just like what happened when the crew split up, say, during Dressrosa, where half the crew already went ahead to Zou, or like when the crew split up after Zou with half the crew already going ahead to Wano and the other half chasing Sanji to Whole Cake Island. So yeah, I could really see Robin, Brook, Frankie, and Jinbei, and Lilith, question mark, and Bonnie and Kuma, question, okay, we'll get to those later, but basically all of them continue onwards to Elbaf already and then start the arc kind of forging relationships while the rest of the crew has something else to accomplish in the meantime that we're gonna focus on instead. Which honestly could be as simple as escaping whatever mad toy house they're in right now, or it could be something even bigger like a full-on rescue operation for Luffy's grandpa Garp. But again, I'll have more takes on the insane situation that the world's strongest vice admiral is in just right now in a few minutes, but wow, I would absolutely love to see some kind of mini Marineford rescue mission arc for Luffy strolling up to Hachinosu and tearing up the place to save his grandpa, this time successfully, you know, mirroring the Ace rescue mission, which you might argue that Luffy has no way of knowing right now that Garp is captured, and even if he did find out, then he might not care enough to go anyways, thinking that his grandfather is strong enough. But personally, I just can't believe that Luffy would actually leave his grandfather to die, especially at the hands of someone like Blackbeard. Plus, how else are we ever gonna see Luffy on the one and only pirate island? Because really, this would be the perfect time to do it. So yeah, there are a ton of things that could be accomplished with a split up crew following separate story arcs for a little while, and it would definitely give some of the other Straw Hats a lot more possibilities to shine as well than they have in some of the recent arcs. Let me know in the comments who you think should deserve some more screen time in your opinion. But next up, I'm gonna lay out some real evidence here that you honestly might not have ever considered after reading this chapter, because the third very likely scenario here for what is going on is not a self-contained mini arc or the crew splitting up for a long stretch. Nope. Instead, it is extremely likely, honestly, that we have already started the Elbaf arc on Elbaf, and Nami's group is actually being held captive by a giant from Elbaf on the island. Now, maybe you already thought that yourself, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me explain. Clearly, someone has dressed Nami in this new Elbaf warrior Viking looking clothing outfit, which is a clear sign that whoever has captured them has some tie to Elbaf. Now, that doesn't say much by itself yet, but on top of that, the room that she's locked in looks absolutely huge. So those are some small hints that we might already be on Elbaf, but that's not the only evidence that their captor is a giant, because let me turn your attention back to the Whole Cake Island arc, where we first learned about the supposed Prince of Elbaf, Prince Loki. Now, to be fair, we don't really know that much about Loki yet, except that he fell in love with Big Mom's daughter, Charlotte Lola, which is a little bit of an interesting match, to say the least, but hey, you can't help true love, although you certainly have to have particular tastes if Lola, out of all people, is who you fall in love with. And I also have to preface here that I do have a video coming out about the next potential Straw Hats after Elbaf, and Loki is a candidate in that video, and I make a case for that, so keep that in mind. And with all of that being said though, I think it's not too much of a stretch to imagine that Loki is still looking for love and a bride, and he might be more than willing to capture someone like Nami to become his wife. And there's actually another really interesting connection for that, because on top of all that, Thriller Bark also had a plotline of Nami being kidnapped, and then she was almost forced to marry someone who she didn't want to. And remember, Thriller Bark was where we first met Lola, and she became really close friends with Nami, so there are some really close connections here that could add up to Loki having potentially captured Nami and the others to force Nami to be his bride. Because honestly, I'm kind of struggling to think of anyone else who would have this weird giant Lego house near Elbaf or on Elbaf. Maybe some child giant princess, or oh no, I just had the worst thought. Maybe Big Mom is back and has amnesia again and made this Lego toy house. Oh man, please let's not go into that direction again, okay? Let's stick with Loki. Now, of course, Loki himself is not the only serious option for who could have captured them, because we've already mentioned the man marked by flames, but another option is, of course, this mysterious figure who seemed to be waiting for the Straw Hats on the coast of Elbaf as well. Under the assumption, of course, that this guy isn't the man marked by flames. Or it could just be a whole brand new character that we've never seen before who will go on to play a major role going forward. Or it could be Scopper Gaban, but I mean, let's not get our hopes up here too much. Now, we spent a whole lot of time in this video already discussing what might happen to the crew next, but we've forgotten one very important part of the entire mystery, which is how did the Thousand Sunny and Nami's group just disappear? Like, let's be real, it's actually super strange, right? I mean, in this chapter, we literally see the ship being tied to that of the Giants, plus you kind of have to think that there would have been some sort of lookouts awake to watch over everything. So how did they just vanish in the middle of the night, unless all of them just got wasted, which would feel very let's say, not safe, being just out there drifting and everyone asleep in the new world. And well, let me say that the first option is maybe the most dark and twisted theory that I can come up with, and that is that there's actually a traitor within the Giants crew. That's right, we're back on the entire traitor plotline, because let me point you to a few very interesting details from this chapter. First is this line right here, where this mustachioed giant tells the crew that the booze is an absinthe called the Green Fairy, which, first of all, insanely dope name, I want to try that, which might actually make you hallucinate. Now, that's the type of merch that I think Toei should be really pumping out. Now, in case you don't know, absinthe is a really strong liquor that was actually banned in many parts of the real world for its insanely high alcohol content and rumors that it can actually make you hallucinate. But what's most interesting here is that even the crew's heaviest drinkers with the most tolerance, like Nami or Zoro, seem to be hitting their absolute limit quite quickly with this very particular brew. Also, this is a slight tangent, but we see Luffy drinking, and I'm kind of like, I don't know, in my head, I kind of imagine that Luffy never drinks alcohol, but thinking back to it, that might just not be true. I don't know why I kind of thought that was the case. Kind of weird, but anyways. Coming back to the problem at hand, was it just that the liquor was so highly potent and that Nami had had enough? Or was there something in this drink and food that really properly knocked everyone out here? To be fair, we already had a whole other mention and kind of narrative storyline about poison in this chapter anyways, and just look at what Dory and Bragi say when they wake up, because they seem to not know what has happened. Which to me kind of suggests that they don't usually pass out the way that they did after this feast with the Straw Hats, right? So that is kind of traitor evidence piece number one, but that's actually not the only clue here, because the rope that held the Sunny to the giant ship is also surprisingly missing. So it surely does look like someone untied it and let the Sunny drift away from the giant ship. So as much as I don't usually like to see repeated plot points like a traitor storyline, it is very much a possibility, I think, that there is some sort of traitor are among the giants that Dory and Broggy brought along to save the crew. Which, when you think about it, does make sense since they stopped at Elbaf before rescuing the Straw Hat, so it would have been really easy for a giant we've just never met before to slip on board and infiltrate that crew. But now, just for argument's sake, let's also consider some of the other possibilities here. And man, do I love Robin's dark humor when she says in this chapter that they could have been eaten by a giant fish, which honestly, entirely possible since the sea creatures we see all around the waters here are truly massive. However, on the other hand, we also can't really rule out some sort of devil fruit power being used that moved the Thousand Sunny or some other piece of technology. I mean, you all remember this thing that sucked up Bage's ship back in chapter 594? No? I mean, I think we all keep forgetting about this because we actually never got an explanation for what this was, so this or something like this could have very much sucked the Thousand Sunny right up into the sky. And to continue that very idea with the Straw Hats having gone up into the sky again, let's bring up another really famous folktale or fable, Elbaf fable, with Jack and the giant beanstalk. Because in the earliest image that we got of Elbaf, there was this giant tree-like structure in the background taking up most of the space on the island. Plus, we do know that there is an official entrance into the Sky Islands called the Way of the High West, so there has long been the idea that you can get into the Sky Islands kind of properly, the proper way, from this giant tree in Elbaf. So I can imagine that someone up in the Sky Islands was spying on the Straw Hats and decided to suck them up into the heavens, and that would kind of make it a real rescue mission, because if we go back to the storyline of Jack and the Beanstalk, the main character Jack climbed into the giant's castle in the sky where he ended up rescuing a golden goose, which interestingly enough, there is this little image here of a bird head on the wall here next to Nami, so there are some clues to connect these two ideas together. But boiling all of this down though, we don't really know how this is gonna play out at all, but one thing is for sure, and that's that the crew is splitting up at this point again, which means the possibility of just more interesting storylines and more possibility for danger and rescue missions, which I am always on board with, and it already promises a really great start to the new arc. And speaking of danger here though, and pivoting a little bit away, no one's life is in more danger right now than the biggest Luffy fanboys, which is the Bardo Club Pirates. Because as we saw in this chapter, Bartolomeo finally had to pay for burning Shanks' flag in this cover story when he came face to face with the Red Hair Pirates and their captain. But what's actually most interesting to me personally about this whole scene is not Bartolomeo's undying loyalty or the fact that he might be just dead at the bottom of the ocean at this point, but rather it is the mysterious dual nature that Oda keeps presenting for Shanks and his crew. Because whenever we keep seeing them now, on the one hand, they're clearly good guys who will do anything to protect those under their flag. I mean, just ask Kid, am I right? And then on top of that, they seem genuinely interested and also kind of happy for Luffy to be out making loyal friends and followers and kind of growing as a pirate. But then we also get straight up murderous moments like Yasop here stepping in and blowing up an entire crew without second thought, just to prove a point. And if there is one thing we can tell at this point, it's that this is pretty much business as usual for any of these guys. And I just gotta say, guys, personally, I absolutely love the mystery here with how Shanks is being written by Oda, because it brings up the most important question of all over and over again. What will Shanks really do when he meets Luffy again? Will they be serious rivals or friends reunited after a long time? I mean, honestly, I kind of really don't know at this point, because we even see Shanks crack a kind enough looking smile, I would say, thinking about Luffy in this chapter, as he has done multiple times throughout the entire story, and it happens pretty much every time he sees Luffy with a new bounty. Plus, he came to Marineford and essentially saved Luffy's life there, right? But then again, if we're being real, Oda has really been trying to sell us all the idea recently that Shanks is only using Luffy in order to chase his own goals. For example, Shanks only decided suddenly to go after the One Piece himself once Luffy awakened his Nika powers. He also had the Nika fruit in his possession at the start of the story, so was he just waiting for a Nika all this time so that he could move to the next step of his plan, knowing that he would need a Joy Boy / Nika in order to use the One Piece? Now, if this were the case, that would kind of mean that Shanks had just been been using and grooming Luffy all this time and might be his true rival and enemy during the final stretch to find the legendary treasure. And that being said, if you want my personal real opinion on this though, I kind of can't imagine Shanks really going all out to kill Luffy. I kind of like to think that Shanks will fight Luffy when they first meet, just to test him, kind of like he tested Bartolomeo in this chapter as well with the fake deadly poison. And somehow that's not the most shocking bit of Shanks information, because this chapter seemingly also confirms that Shanks is no longer on Elbaf. I mean, it is a little bit unclear if all of this is happening in the present or sometime in the past or parallel timelines, like who knows. But from what I can tell here, it does seem to be in the present day story, which would mean that Luffy and Shanks still somehow won't meet when the Straw Hats eventually reach Elbaf, which is disappointing in some ways, but also kind of to be expected in some others, because I do think we were all looking forward to the arc when Luffy could finally catch up to his mentor and prove that he's a great pirate. But on the other hand, if it's not gonna happen now on Elbaf, then that just kind of means that Oda has other plans for Shanks in the future, and potentially Luffy and Shanks kind of meeting in that big final clash for Laugh Tale. And we're of course not done yet, because this chapter just keeps going on with insane world reveals, because over on Hachinosu we got confirmation that Garp was defeated, but still very much alive, as I think we all expected. Though honestly, I'm not sure how those chains are actually keeping him locked up. Those must be made out of some really crazy stuff. And it's very much Oda magic here, because there is no way in reality that a man who can do this would be held down by a few chains like these here. Anyways, like I said earlier, I could very much see Garp's situation turning into some sort of little rescue mission from Luffy, but we also have to consider Blackbeard's plans for the hero of the Marines as well. Now, as he has stated previously, he intends to use Garp as a bargaining chip to force the world government to make him an official king and member of the world government. So I guess Blackbeard also doesn't know about the entire sword thing, and Garp potentially not even being a bargaining chip, having resigned from the Marines potentially. However, we all know that those aren't his only goals now, because I'm pretty sure his reasoning for joining the world government had to involve gaining access to Merijoa for some underhanded scheme as well. Now, what's surprising here though is that we did get a closer hint at yet another part of his grand plan when we saw Blackbeard's right-hand man Lafitte, who is just still this big mystery, spying on the Revolutionary Army's activity as well in this chapter. And part of me kind of loves this military and siege strategy that's going on with the revolutionaries, starving the world nobles in Merijoa, but we still do have to ask, why in the world is Blackbeard interested in any of this? And well, this might or might not surprise you, but Blackbeard has always had a really strong interest in the Revolutionary Army and Dragon in particular. I mean, remember back after Dressrosa, when Jesus Burgess smuggled his way in the Revolutionary Army's base on Baltigo? Well, Blackbeard and his entire crew could have just rescued Burgess, but instead they showed up and ended up destroying the entire base. And if you combine that event with Lafitte now spying on the revolutionaries in this chapter, it kind of makes me wonder if Blackbeard really wants the revolutionaries gone for good. I mean, the only thing that I can think of right now is that he just wants to protect the world government for his own plans, so the revolutionaries basically don't mess with his plans, and thus possibly gain access to Merijoa, which one way or the other is going to be a very important plot point going forward. Which to me just means that when Blackbeard's plans do finally get revealed in the end, we're gonna have a non-stop epic moment series of things happening all throughout the final saga. But will Blackbeard's plot be the most important piece of the final stretch of the story? I mean, it kind of makes you wonder what the best part of the end of the story will actually be, but have you ever wondered what the most important moments of each arc so far have been? I mean, let's be real, there's a fierce debate about whether Robin's I Wanna Live or Luffy's gut-wrenching fight with Rob Lucci were the most important moment of Enies Lobby, and it's nearly impossible to decide. But if you want to see what I think is the most important, monumental, and game-changing moment in each single arc for the overall story, you can watch that video right here below me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much to all of our Patreons who really help make us this great content and keep making better and better videos and more nice artwork as well. If you want to support the channel and get some fantastic perks, behind the scenes, early access, please go check it out, help us out, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you in the next video.